Welcome to the Happiness Happens podcast. I'm Simona Costantini, blogger, storyteller, and life enthusiast. Each week, I will bring you an idea, guest, or positive thought to help inspire you to create happiness and live on purpose. We decide the stories we tell ourselves and where we choose to invest our energy. It's time to cultivate a positive mind for a positive, more meaningful life. I'm so grateful you popped in. Now let's get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode on the Happiness Happens podcast. I'm so excited today to launch our very first interview with someone who is an incredibly huge mentor to me and has had a massive hand in my journey and in the creation of this podcast. And her name is Ashley-Ann Pereira.
Thanks for having me. Hi, everyone.
Ashley-Ann is the author of The Key to Happiness and is a speaker. Her healing program coaches women through the process of breaking free from the chains of their past that limit their ability to love themselves fully. She's also the founder of The Writing Studio, which guides coaches, healers, and speakers to publish their stories and teachings so they can attract the right clients and transform people's lives. So, Ashley, for everyone who might not know you yet, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself and the journey that brought you to where you are today?
Absolutely. Well, first off, thank you so much for having me. And it kind of just gets me excited hearing that bio intro. I love it. And it's honestly an honor to be here on this podcast with you. I love what it's about. Of course, happiness happens. It's all about what I'm about. So I guess for me, my journey started roughly about 5 years ago. And I went to school for social service work, and I knew my passion was always going to come back to helping people. I just wasn't sure what exactly that was going to look like. And about 5 years ago, I actually started public speaking, and I fell in love. I fell in love with connecting with people and having people come up to me and say, thank you for what you shared. I really connected with you and resonated with you. And when I decided in 2015 to finally enter into my first public speaking competition, and I ended up really getting vulnerable and sharing my struggle with confidence and how I was able to overcome that, and seeing a standing ovation, I knew immediately, I was like, I'm going to be doing this for a while. And my journey really started with public speaking, and I would always just share whenever I had the opportunity or was invited to speak on a different platform. I would just almost pick out of a hat, okay, what piece of my story do I want to share now? And I always wanted to keep it different. And by doing that, I then decided that it was time to put all the different experiences that I had throughout my life, and decided to transform that into a book. And so I wrote the book, The Key to Happiness. And then from there, I decided to go a step further and then turn that book into an online coaching program. So that's kind of my journey in a brief nutshell.
It's so interesting trying to pack in 5 years of learnings and life lessons into a couple of minutes to explain to everyone what it is that you do. Something that you said that I really, really loved was it kind of just sounds like your journey was very fluid and things just kind of happened, and unfolded in the way that it was sort of meant to be. Do you think that your passions guided you into where you are today? And, it sounds like they just happened, but what do you think made you take the next step? What do you think nudged you in the next direction?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that it was definitely listening to my intuition and following what I was passionate about, but also more so the way that I was able to find what I was passionate about was by trying new things and really needing to step outside my comfort zone. For example, for the public speaking competition, I wouldn't have known that it was something that I was passionate about or loved if I didn't step outside of my comfort zone and just did it. And so I think that, we have an intuitive guiding system that's going to tell us whether or not to do something. And we just really have to get quiet and listen to that, because it will lead us to the passions and what we love and what we're supposed to be doing and meant to do.
I love that so much. So, it's really listening to your own self and understanding what you think that you want for yourself. And so do you have any guidance that you would give to someone who really doesn't have any idea where to start? Like someone who doesn't know maybe quite yet how to get quiet and to turn inwards and, to explore that.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people would immediately say, go and meditate. But let me tell you that for many years, to be honest, I only recently started to incorporate meditation into my routine. I never did it. Actually, so I thought I had a different form of meditating, but it's important to, a different way. If getting quiet is maybe not something that you're super comfortable with, like, how do I do that? Then use your support system, use the people around you, and start just bouncing ideas off of them and be like, hey, what do you think about this? And you have to be selective in who your community is and who those people are, because you don't want to go to people who are going to put you down or deter you from going after what you want to do. But at the end of the day, and this comes from a book that I'm reading currently, it's called Ask and It Is Given. And it simply says the way that you know whether or not you're aligned with something is how you feel, your emotions. So all you really need to do is, if there's an opportunity presenting itself to you, how do you feel about it? Do you feel good about it? That's something that you want to go after then. And if you don't feel good about it, then it's not something that you want to do.
And how would you release the fear around something that you think that you want to do, but you're not sure if you should do?
Ooh, that's a tough one. It's a tough one because it's so simple for me to just say, you really just need to go for it. I know that sounds super simple. But that's really what it comes down to. Like you really just have to say, you have to quiet the voice that you hear. And at the end of the day, that voice, you'll know that at the end, when you do something, you're going to feel a lot better. I can guarantee you that you will never regret pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. Because every single time, I'll be honest, every single time that I get up on stage or am just about to get on stage, I'm nervous all the time. And no matter what, I still do it and I never regret it at the end, no matter the outcome. So it's important that you don't allow your fears to paralyze you, because at the end of the day, you'll stay stuck forever. But I find that when you're super passionate about something and you have a really big dream and you have a really big why behind it as well, it'll allow you to quiet the inner voice of that fear popping in and say, no, this is really what I want to do. And I need to do this in order to take that next step.
Oh my God. Yeah. Does it ever? That's such a powerful answer though. Especially, the why and the purpose behind what you do, because I think that sometimes when people go and try new things, there's always a fear that it's not going to work out and so on and so on. So people just automatically assume that they can't do it or they shouldn't do it. But oftentimes if you're doing something and you're fearful of it, or you're feeling some type of way around it, that actually usually means that that's the step in the right direction or something that you should be doing, right? And so
Absolutely.
What was your why for writing your book? I'm so interested in your book and I want to talk about it. And I want to understand where it came from.
The big why behind it was I just wanted to help people. And I know that sounds so broad. There was a lot of sadness that I experienced in my life in the early stages. And if it was all I wanted was one person to read that book and know that they weren't alone and just have some sort of tool that would help them get out of the situation that they might have been in. That was really the why I wrote it. And funny enough, writing was, at a young age, I really didn't feel like I had a voice, and it was pushing myself on stage that helped me find my voice. And it was always writing that was my therapy outlet in a sense. And it was something that I always turned to. And yeah, so that's why I decided to just put the fears aside. And there was many that came up even while I was writing the book. So it's not like everything's perfect on my end. The fears do still come up, but again, I knew the reason as to why I wanted to write this book. And I also had support around me that would remind me why I wanted to write the book. And it ended up coming to life.
It's so incredible too. I mean, what did you feel like? How did you feel at your book launch? And, having and seeing people with copies of your book in their hands, like, can you tell us about what that feels like? Because there might be someone listening right now that, that's writing a book and maybe is in the halfway stages and is like, oh, I shouldn't complete this. This is silly. But, what's the reward for you, after publishing your book?
The book launch, being there and just seeing everyone have a copy was so surreal and so exciting. And even though, a lot of it was friends and family, I was really excited for more people to get their hands on it. And when, seeing people read it in a day was actually so exciting, because you just see immediately, people are sending you messages that like, wow, this is truly amazing. And it's that motivation that just pushes you to go further and not stop. So when you see at the end, and that's why I think it's so important when you are writing a book, it's important to use your community to share the process that you're going through and share the insights that you're sharing, because then you're going to get your community excited about what you're writing. And it's almost as if you're writing it for your community, and it'll just almost guarantee that they're going to buy your book in the end, because they know it's almost being written directly for them.
That's a really, really good point. And I've read your book and I love your book. It's such an easy read. There's so many lessons to learn from your writing and, your experiences. And so when you say, you just want to help one person, I mean, you got one right over here, so that's good. You're welcome. Do you have plans for a second book?
I've thought about it, and I've been asked a few times. At the moment, I don't have plans, simply because I really want to help people. Because after I launched my book, I realized that there were so many other people who were actually like wanted to write a book or were in the process and feeling stuck. And I got really passionate about helping people through that process. So I'm kind of focused on helping other people launch their books. But I think in the future, I've had some ideas, and it might be something that, I've only lived 25 years, so there has to be another point.
Right? Yeah, exactly. There has to be, you'll have more learnings down the road, and maybe that'll turn into a different book one day. So you talk a lot about community and relying on your community to sort of give you some guidance of what they want to hear and, how they feel about certain things. And so could you give a few tips to people who are listening on what they can do to tap into their community, and what the benefit is of doing that?
Absolutely. I think the first thing that jumps to my mind is just share. Like, go on whatever platform you use, whether it's Instagram, Facebook. Those are the ones that I use the most. But whatever platform you use, and pull up the camera, start recording a video of whatever inspiration you're feeling, or a lesson that you're in the midst of learning, a challenge that you're experiencing. Just share it. Share the good, share the bad, because your community is going to resonate with that, and they're going to respond to that. And that's where, rely on your community for support, even when you need it. So I just think, like, not thinking about it and just whipping out your phone, press record, and just share your thoughts. Even if you're rambling, it doesn't matter, because people are going to sense your passion, and people also are going to they're going to listen, because it might be something that they're going to take away from. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it totally does. And how, if you're new to all of this, like, how do you find your community? Like, what are some things that you did to help find your community?
Yeah, a lot of it was, there's a lot of networking that happens. When you go to different kinds of events, you find your community. But I've been able to, especially on Instagram, really utilize the fact that, we can connect with people all over the world in just a matter of seconds. And that is why I honestly love social media, because comparing Instagram and Facebook, you can't really find all of these people with a click of a hashtag. It's a lot difficult. You need to add them as a friend. Whereas on Instagram, you can just send a message to someone who's in Australia, and they could be someone who's a part of your tribe. And that's what happened to me. I actually have someone who's in New York, and she's someone that I lean on all the time. And it's amazing. It's amazing that you can just connect with people all over the world. And so it's just a matter of sharing and going, doing your work and your part to engage with other people and the content that you enjoy and engage with those people. And that's how you build your community and your tribe.
It's such a good point, because when you're on social media, you really do have access like to the entire world. And like you had mentioned, like your support in New York, I have some in like New Zealand and the UK, and like people that, you just talk to on a maybe not a daily basis, but like on a weekly or monthly basis. People you can always bounce ideas off of if you need to, or resources in future if you're not sure how to do something. And it's honestly so amazing to know that you can just send a message to someone, and they'll understand exactly what you're doing. It's so crazy to me. It's so cool.
Exactly. And it's one of the best things because they're not family. So they don't know you on a personal level, and it's almost like very objective.
Exactly. Actually, I wanted to touch on family just a little bit. And it sounds like you have an incredible support network, helping you and cheering you on. What would you say to someone who might not have that support from their family, and who might not have family members understand what they're doing?
This is a loaded question. Okay, let me try and answer it as best as possible. Perfect. I guess, so first off, let me say that there was a point in time in my life where I felt like I didn't have family to lean on. And I realized, and again, this is also included in a lot that I talk about and in my book, and it comes down to forgiveness and ownership and responsibility. So I, at a young age, and this is why I feel like I'm definitely an old soul, because at a young age, I just decided that I wanted to fix my relationships, whatever I could do on my end. And a lot of that meant taking responsibility and forgiving and letting go completely. And because I did that, I was able to truly mend the relationships with every single person in my family. So I have now an incredible relationship with every single person in my family because I chose that. So if that's maybe the situation that you're in, you do have to look at, is there a way that you can take responsibility for what's happened? And also you have to decide too, if you really want those people in your life. Because I understand, and this is where a different perspective, I understand, yes, family is family, but it doesn't always have to be blood. Like, family does not always have to be blood. So you also have to make that choice whether or not you want your family in your life. And let's say worst case scenario, you don't, and you don't have a good relationship with anyone in your family. You know what? You can find your community, and those are the people that end up being your family. So for a long time, my best friends, they were my family. Those were the kinds of people that I was leaning on. So just know that know that you are not alone in any given situation. And there are thousands of people in the world that are willing and ready to be your friend and family. And it's just a matter of you kind of putting yourself out there and finding those people.
In terms of family, do you feel more at peace mending your relationships with your family? And maybe this might be helpful for someone who's listening that doesn't have a great relationship with their family, to understand that there are, positives that come out of that.
Absolutely. There is, to be honest, when I really went through this process of recognizing, what could I have done differently in my relationships? And I was determined to also just let go of things that happened in the past. When I did that, I immediately felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. I started to feel free. And to be honest, I just felt happy. I felt so much happier that I wasn't spending all my focus and energy onto hate and anger and sadness. And I was able to finally shift that into feeling good and being happy.
I love that so much. And I love that you use the word shift. And I'm really curious your thoughts on shifting your emotions. How do you get from, it's so easy to say that you forgive someone or you forgive something, but you could still be so angry about it inside. What is a way, or like, do you have a way that you take any anger or feelings of being upset and shift them to forgiveness and understanding. Like, what do you do to make that shift?
Interesting question. I don't think I've ever been asked that before. So it's definitely getting me to think. I definitely think there is a process on my end where I have, I need to talk that out. And a lot of it, so I'm trying to think of an exact example, but I know many times when, for example, I go to my boyfriend and I'm feeling frustrated or whatever the case may be, having him almost give me that other perspective that I need, like almost like the what ifs, allows me to come back to reality in a sense and diminishes my anger that I'm feeling or any like super intense emotions. And I just come back to a place of like, let's get real and what's actually happening here. And so I think that really helps in terms of shifting my emotions from feeling angry to almost not necessarily happy, but just allowing it to like let go and fizzle out. I'm not sure if that answers your question, to be honest.
No, it totally does. That, and like what I'm kind of hearing is that, it's okay to be angry or upset about something, but coming back to perspective and, actively choosing to let it go will help you let it go.
Exactly.
And it can take a day, it can take a week, but making that choice to shift your emotions and not letting it consume you.
Exactly. And remembering that all this stuff that we talk about is a process. Forgiveness is a process. Letting go is a process. And you need to be gentle with yourself. Like, it's not just going to happen in an instant or overnight. It's going to take time for you to really let it go. But it comes back to exactly what you were saying. It comes back to that choice and just having, looking at different angles and different perspectives.
I love that so much. And I've learned so much from listening to you that mindset is so important to you. So what do you do to ensure you always have, the sharpest mindset? And what do you do to get motivated and to pull yourself out of a negative mindset?
Very interesting question as well. You're asking the good ones, to be honest. You're asking the really good ones.
Thanks.
I'm not going to lie. There are still times where I deal with, the doubt that pops into our head. It's those inner voices. They used to last a very long time, like months on end, whereas now they really only probably last like less than a day, a couple hours, maybe a couple minutes. And I think it's really important for you to, when it comes down to the motivation it's really important for you to be doing something that you're passionate about. I know it's coming to circling back to what we were talking about at the beginning, but it's really true. If you have something that is like to your core, your why, and you're passionate about, and most likely it's exactly what you're put on this earth to be doing, you're going to wake up every single day feeling very motivated. Yes, you'll have off days. That's okay. It's probably your body telling you, listen, I need a break, and just listen to your body. But to be honest, probably 80% of the time, 90% of the time, you're going to be doing everything because you're so passionate about what you're doing. And when it comes to mindset, it's really important that you're always just be a student, like always be willing to learn from people and don't be afraid to ask people for help. I think that's one of the biggest things that I've learned is that we think that we need to do everything by ourselves, and that's not the case whatsoever. There are people that are willing to help you, and not always where you need to invest a ton of money into that. There's people willing to help you, and it's important. It's a daily, something that you have to really do daily. And I find that my biggest tip when I'm experiencing or in the moment of the negative self-talk, you really have to replace those thoughts immediately. And that's where I come back to the conscious process of it. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's something that you have to work on so hard to change. And in the moment, you really have to be like, no, let me switch this thought to an empowering thought. And even though if you might not believe it right away, your mind doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's not. So you just have to repeat that empowering thought like 15 to 30 times. And it'll eventually stick.
I really like that tactic, repeating it over and over and over again. And, maybe even repeating it out loud to yourself so you can actually hear it. And
No, exactly. And even in the mirror too. Like go into the mirror. And this is what I had to do for a very long time because I had so much struggle with confidence and body image. I literally had to look at myself in the eye, like pick one eye and very much look at yourself in the mirror. And it's going to feel super awkward, super strange, but pick maybe 3 to 5, like good, empowering thoughts. Repeat it to yourself daily.
It is so true that is it's the most awkward experience to go through. Standing there and looking at yourself and telling yourself something is, I think, so much more impactful than any compliment or comment that anyone could ever say to you, because you're looking at your own self and you have to accept yourself for exactly what you are and forgive, like forgive all the things that you've done in the past or, all the things you've said to yourself that you don't love. And it's such a hard exercise to do. I've done it before and I was like, no, I got to walk away. Like, this is so, I was like, I got to walk away.
It's true. And the thing is too, is just, use your environment too use it to your advantage. Use your environment to post things that are going to inspire you or remind you how great you are. I know people who set reminders on their phone throughout the day and it'll just pop up on their phone. And that's another reminder. Use your phone as like your background on your phone. What is it? You know what I mean? Like replace it with maybe a quote for a week and then change it every week or whatever it is. But use your advantage, like use that's the environment.
Suggestion. Like that's such a good takeaway, from this episode. If there's one thing that you can do every single day is to set up the environment around you to be the most positive and supportive of your own self that you can, right?
Exactly.
So do you have a limiting belief that you've had to overcome? Like what's the most significant one that's been the hardest for you to overcome?
The most significant one has been people not taking me seriously. And it comes back to me because I'm 25 and because I very much don't look like I'm 25. I look like I'm like 15. So unfortunately, that's something that I've had to really overcome. And the way that I've had to overcome that was, really just by positioning myself as an expert in my field. Like that's what it came down to. And, how I was going about like just acting very professional. And immediately when people have a conversation with me and people talk to me, they see that, I'm a lot wiser beyond my years and I'm not really like 25 in the mindset. So that creates a shift. So I just have to keep showing up in that way.
That's so true, especially about, people not taking you seriously when you're younger. I think, and I've heard this with my own self in the past, people are so easy to say like, well, you're so young. How much do you know? How can you really speak to this? Do you even have experience in this? And so I think it's so important, just exactly what you said, to like always remind yourself that you're exactly like that you're so qualified to be doing what you're doing, right?
Exactly. And I think there was this one quote that really helped in my perspective when I was going through this challenge. It's something along the lines of, it's not the amount of years that it's lived, it's more of how you've lived those years.
Oh, I know that
something
quote.
Along
it's
those
so
lines.
Good because it's so true. You could have lived 60 years and have, not learned anything, not learned anything, but, not be as wise as someone who's 20, right? Like you can't say what someone's experiences have taught them or not.
Exactly.
So if you think back to all of the different things that you've overcome, what's the best lesson you learned along the way?
There's so many. I think the best lesson that I've learned actually comes from this book that I read, because it really shifted everything for me. And I've told you about this book, The 4 Agreements.
I love that book.
And you know what? Like that book really gave me the biggest lesson, because I think so often, so many of us just take things personally. We make assumptions, and those lead to arguments. They lead to like destruction, like self-sabotage. And after reading that book, it was the biggest wake-up call for me to stop doing that. And it truly changed everything in every single one of my relationships with my sisters, with my parents, like everything, with my boyfriend. Like it changes everything. And I think that's been the biggest lesson. And just forgiveness too.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
I had to throw that in there.
Yeah, of course. How do you take the lessons that you learn from books and integrate them into your daily lives? Because I don't know, I'll think of myself like as an example. I read things and at the time they resonate with me so much, and then I feel like I forget about them afterwards.
And that's okay. You know what I mean? Like I've read many books, and some of them, to be honest, I don't remember what they're about. And that's simply probably because they weren't meant for me at that time. And so, the reason why the Four Agreements is one book that I always come back to is because it's the lesson that I had to learn. And so I think when it sticks, and you'll know when it needs to stick, it will, and you'll automatically start integrating that into your life. But no matter what, when it comes to breaking old patterns, I always revert and remind people that it's a very conscious process, and you need to be gentle with yourself. Those are the two things that I always tell people. We have patterns that we've been integrating, that we've been doing for so many years, and it's not so easy to just break them. So you have to, it's a conscious process, and you have to be gentle with yourself through that process.
Exactly. I mean, releasing, all your fears and years of, ideologies and ways of acting and being is an incredibly hard thing to do. And I think that people often forget, that it's hard to do. Like, you've spent X amount of years building up all of these different ways. So now to sit there and break them all down and learn something new isn't as simple as it sounds, right?
Exactly. And even fun, like what I'm thinking about too, as we're talking, is I think about this experience that I had with, and many people might not know about this, but generational healing. And basically what it comes down to is that a lot of the things that we struggle with are actually being passed down from our ancestors. It's very interesting. And going through a session like that, I was amazed to see that, and you could see the pattern. I could see the pattern of people in my life that struggled with confidence and body image, and that struggle and like trusting men. And I could see it in my sisters. I could see it in the women in my life. So it's something that's being passed down. It's a matter of like breaking this habit, this pattern that's not only just from us, but it's being passed down, whether we know it or not.
I think that's so important to highlight too, because I think oftentimes we look up to, our family members and our parents and our siblings if they're older than us, and we see all of the things that impact them. And whether we realize it or not, just like you just said, they impact us too, right? Like we take away different things like that. And so if you see your mom, for example, always saying, oh my God, I'm so fat, I'm so this, I'm so that, you're naturally going to have those same words in your head. So really it's up to you to break them, right?
Absolutely. And it takes a lot. And I think part of it, and this is why I have this like very curiosity as to like how we come to be. I don't know. I'm going to go on a different tangent, but anyways, what I'm just trying to say is that, it comes down to, like, I remember being at a young age, and I remember seeing my mom struggle. She was a single mom, and I saw her working 3 jobs, and it's up to us whether we take that on as that's how life is supposed to be, or that's not how I want my life to be.
Exactly. That's so, so, so important, because just because your parents did something a specific way does not mean that you have to do it a specific way. And I mean, success can be measured in so many different ways and can be so different to so many different people. So maybe financial success is important to one person, whereas, peace and happiness is the version of success for another, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So my last and my final question for you is, what is one thing that people can do to integrate more happiness in their lives each day?
It comes down to, 2 things, I would say. Yeah, 2 things. So forgiveness, number 1, forgiveness. If you forgive a lot more and forgive yourself, forgive other people, you'll experience a lot more happiness. To break that down even further, when it comes down to forgiveness, it's important that, you also look at how you can take responsibility and how you can do better and really let go. That's the key piece that I think people miss when it comes to forgiveness, because they say, yeah, I forgive you. But, a few months later, they're bringing up that thing that person did to you. That's not forgiveness. So the true missing piece of forgiveness is letting go for good. And the last thing that I would say is practice gratitude. And I don't just mean, wake up every day and write 5 things that you're grateful for, or go to sleep at night and write down 5 things that you're grateful for. And I mean, go even further and put yourself in a situation where, you have to imagine your life as if you could not see anymore. Those are the kinds of questions that for me, I do to myself. And it immediately puts me in this immense state of gratitude. So be in a constant state of gratitude. And it's actually, I think, been said that and studied that if you're in a state of gratitude, you can't also be in another state. You can't be operating in anger or sadness if you're in a state of gratitude.
Oh my God, it's so true. And it's such a true point, because this is the one thing that I do personally to try and pull myself out of, a bad mood or, something that I'm angry about. Because if you're focusing on something that's positive and being grateful for the things that you do have, you can't sit there and be angry about something else. And, to your point of, imagining that you can't see anymore, for me, it's imagining that I can't walk anymore. Like, I'm always so grateful that I can just walk. Think of not having that. It's absolutely crazy. Like,
yeah. Think of like what your life would be like if you eliminated one of your senses. And often the biggest ones are like, sight, hearing. Like, imagine you could not hear your loved ones tomorrow.
Oh my God, it's so true. Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, it shifts everything.
It really, really does. And it makes your, what seems to be such a big problem, it really doesn't make it seem that big anymore. And, things are not permanent. Everything is temporary. And even the way that you're feeling right now, right? So whether it's happy or sad or, whatever, I think recognizing that that's temporary adds to, feelings of gratitude.
Exactly. And just, doing this work on a constant basis and just recognizing, just ask yourself, like, whatever you're upset about, like, is it legitimate? Is it something that really needs to be taking all of this energy up from you? And when you do that, you really shift into more living in happiness. And at the end of the day, it also comes down to, living your dream, as cheesy and cliche as that sounds, but doing what you're passionate about. Then you will honestly be in a state of happiness consistently.
Exactly. And, we should probably mention also that you can do what you love to do and work, a job, for example, that you don't love, because it's important to, at the same time, while you're supporting your dreams and making them grow, we all do need to live and survive at the same time. So they can both coexist together, and you can do both of those together.
Exactly, 100%. I wrote my book while working full time.
It can be done, everybody. It can be done.
100%. Yeah, it can be done.
Ashley, is there anything else that you wanted to add to this conversation today, or anything else you feel like our listeners need to know or should remember or integrate into their lives?
I would just remember, life is short. And I don't mean to say that in a morbid way or like, tomorrow's going to be like the end of the world. I just mean like, go in with that mentality. And, there's a lot of people who pass that don't live out their dreams. And so if you're still here and you're able to just live out your dreams, whatever that means for you, and just do it. Like, don't think too much about it. Don't wait for things to be perfect or for the right timing, because it's never going to be the right timing. Because if you just put yourself out there and really go after what you want, you truly just live constantly in happiness, and you'll end your life a lot more happier.
Thank you so much, Ashley, for sharing all of your wisdom and your insight with us today, and for being here and for hopping on here to do an interview. I'm so grateful for you, and I'm so grateful that you shared everything that's so important to you with us.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. I love your podcast, and I love being able to see it grow and seeing you share your wisdom with your audience. And it's going to be cool to just integrate different interviews with different perspectives. And I'm proud of you, and I'm grateful to know you.
Oh, thank you so much. It makes me feel so nice. Thank you. And for everyone listening, if you think that someone needs to hear this episode today, be sure to share it. Leave a comment, or if you have a question for Ashley, we will post where you can find her in the notes of the show. And so if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out. But thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in, and we will talk to you next week. Thanks so much for being here today. I hope these words have brought you inspiration, insight, and a bit more happiness. Please leave a comment or a review if this episode resonates with you. I would be so grateful. Until next time, remember that happiness happens when you're least expecting it.